Part 1. The mask you don't know you're wearing. Have you ever had the unsettling feeling that you're living someone else's life? That despite your free will, your choices seem eerily predictable, like you're following a script you never agreed to write? That right there is the archetype whispering through your mind. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This video is not just a conversation, it's an intervention. If you watch until the end, something in you might never be the same again. We're going to take you on a deep psychological and philosophical journey, one that threatens everything you believe about your identity. But what if that's exactly what you need? Because maybe, just maybe, the version of you that you think is you is just a mask. A mask worn so long, it fused with your skin. Ask yourself, who were you before the world told you who to be? Before the trauma, before the approval seeking, before the roles. There's a hidden architecture beneath your behavior's archetypes. They are not just symbols in mythology. They are living forces within your psyche. The hero, the victim, the rebel, the caregiver. You've seen them in stories, but they live in you. And one of them, maybe more, has taken over your operating system. You think you're making choices, but you're acting out an old story, passed down for generations, reinforced by culture, family, even your own fears. Let's begin with a story. Imagine a child who always had to be perfect to get love. So they became the achiever. Success became their drug, failure their nightmare. Fast forward 20 years, they're making money, winning awards, but they feel empty. Why? Because they never chose that path. It was chosen for them by the archetype of the achiever. The mask promised safety, but all it delivered was a prison made of gold. Now hold up a mirror. Which archetype has been running your life? Is it the caregiver who can't say no? The hero always trying to prove something? The outcast who pushes people away before they can be abandoned? These roles are not inherently bad. They're survival strategies. But what happens when survival becomes your identity? What happens when the very role that once protected you begins to suffocate you? If you're feeling that knot in your gut, that resistance, stay with it. That's your soul waking up. The philosopher Søren Kierkegaard wrote, "The most common form of despair is not being who you are." So let's go deeper. Ask yourself, if you were stripped of every archetype, every label, every role, who would remain? Would there be anything left of you? Or have you become so entangled in your persona that you've forgotten your essence? Let's look at the science. Psychologically, archetypes are patterns encoded into the collective unconscious. They are evolutionary tools, shortcuts to help us navigate the world. But in modern life, they can become psychological constraints. The brain craves identity because identity feels safe. But growth feels like death to the ego. That's why change is hard. It's not just about behavior. It's about dying to who you thought you were.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Here's the paradox. You can't kill the archetype. You can't erase it, but you can transcend it. You can become aware of it. And in that awareness, you create space. Freedom lives in that space. Viktor Frankl put it beautifully. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. That space is where archetypes lose their grip. But how do you find that space? It begins with brutal honesty, radical self-inquiry. Observe your reactions. Ask why you do what you do, even when you know it hurts you. Sit with the discomfort. Don't run. Don't numb. Face it. This is not self-help fluff, this is psychological surgery. And it hurts. But pain is the price of freedom. You've been asleep in a dream you didn't choose. This is your wake-up call. Let's go deeper. Think of your life as a stage play. The archetype is the character you've been rehearsing for years. But what if you're not the character? What if you're the actor? Or even more, what if you're the playwright? The one who can rewrite the script. We have to stop asking, who am I? And start asking, who is asking the question? That's where the real transformation begins. Here's a powerful exercise. Write a letter from your dominant archetype to you. Let it speak. Let it explain why it took over. Let the victim say, I was just trying to protect you from pain. Let the hero say, I needed to prove your worth. Let the caregiver say, I was scared no one would love you otherwise. When you hear their voice, you begin to see they were never your enemy, just misguided protectors. But now, you don't need protection. You need liberation. And liberation doesn't come from running away. It comes from integration. From saying, thank you for protecting me, but I'm ready to grow now. This is what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole, of integrating the unconscious with the conscious. Not by rejecting the archetype, but by choosing when and how to use it. Here's the twist most people never see coming. The archetype is not your enemy. It only becomes dangerous when it becomes unconscious, when it becomes your automatic identity. The moment you become aware of it, you're no longer trapped. You're in the driver's seat. You can choose to use the archetype as a tool, not a master. And that's when life begins to change in ways you never imagined. But be warned, the ego will fight back, hard. It will scream, this is who I am. It will cling to the mask because it doesn't know who it is without it. That's okay. Let it scream. Let it panic, then breathe. Watch it. Don't identify with it. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness behind them. You are not the mask. You are the one deciding whether to wear it or not. Now, before we transition to the next part of our journey, ask yourself this. If you weren't trying to be anyone not successful, not liked, not powerful, not wise, what would you do today? What would you say? How would you live? That question has the power to shatter illusions, to burn down the old script, and perhaps in the ashes you'll find the first glimpse of your true self. Part 2, the silent battle in the soul. Let's return now deeper. You've begun to question the mask. You've stared into the mirror and seen something ancient looking back. Now comes the part that most run from, the confrontation. Not with the world, not with society, but with the buried self, the one that you silenced to survive. You see, the real war isn't outside you. It's the silent battle in the soul. And if you don't face it, it will keep writing your story from the shadows. Let's be honest, most people are addicted to their archetype. not because it makes them happy, but because it makes them certain. And the mind prefers misery over mystery. The archetype isn't just a role, it's a cage made of certainty. And here's the trap. When your identity is built on pain, freedom feels like loss. That's why so many people sabotage their healing. Because healing threatens the only self they've ever known. Let's go further. Imagine your soul as a house. Every room is a part of you. But the archetype? It's been sitting on the throne in the living room for decades, pretending to be the owner. It rearranged your furniture, unlocked certain doors, painted over the walls, and now you finally realize you never gave it permission. You never asked it to lead, but it did. And it became the voice in your head, the feeling in your chest, the story in your life. Now ask yourself, what if you reclaimed the house? Not by evicting the archetype, but by taking back your authority? That's the journey of the awakened self. The philosopher Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. But the greatest power you'll ever wield is the power to question the voice inside you. Because when you question your archetype, you begin to hear your true voice. Let me tell you something radical. Not every thought you think is yours. Let that sink in. Just because you feel something doesn't mean it's truth. The archetype speaks through emotion, impulse, habit. But awareness? Awareness speaks through silence, through stillness, through that quiet inner knowing that doesn't scream but whispers. And if you're willing to sit in the silence long enough, the whispers become instructions. Here's the next step in this journey: shadow work. This is not a trendy buzzword. This is soul excavation. Carl Jung defined the shadow as the parts of ourselves we reject, deny, or hide. But here's the twist. The archetype feeds on your shadow. It survives by keeping you unconscious of your wounds. It says you're not angry, you're just nice, or you're not scared, you're just responsible. But beneath every mask is a wound, and beneath every wound is a truth. So how do we face the shadow? Start by tracking your triggers. What makes you overreact? What do you criticize in others? What patterns repeat in your relationships? These are breadcrumbs. Follow them, because your shadow knows where your soul got stuck. It knows the exact moment the archetype stepped in and said, "Don't worry, I'll handle life for you." But now, decades later, that deal is no longer fair. It's time to renegotiate. Here's a deep question. Who would you be if you stopped trying to be good? Not reckless, not cruel, just free. Free from approval, free from shame, free from the compulsion to be enough. Would you even recognize yourself? Or would you feel like a stranger in your own body? That discomfort, that disorientation is the death of the archetype and the birth of the self. Let's talk about the self, not your personality, not your preferences, but the deeper essence beneath all roles. The philosopher Plotinus said, "Withdraw into yourself and look." And if you do not find yourself beautiful yet, act as does the creator of a statue. The self is your inner sculptor, but it can't create if the archetype is still holding the chisel. You must take it back, and the first step is solitude. Solitude is not loneliness. It is meeting yourself without an audience. without performance, without the need to be useful, charming, impressive. Just still, just you. In solitude, the archetype loses its applause. And in that silence, you begin to hear the original voice, the one before the world made you forget. That voice is not loud, it's not dramatic, but it's real, and real is rare. Let's be clear, this journey isn't glamorous. It won't look good on social media. There are no filters for soul work. But it will change everything. Your relationships will shift. Some people will fall away because they were only in love with your archetype, not your truth. But don't mourn them. Thank them. They were part of the story that brought you here. And now you write a new chapter. Here's a practical tool. Create what we call an archetype audit. Write down your dominant patterns. How do you respond to stress, to love, to failure? What role are you playing in these moments? Then ask, is this role serving my growth or just protecting my wound? If it's the latter, it's time to change the script. This is not about destroying who you were. It's about choosing who you become. And now, a mystical insight. Archetypes are not just psychological, they are energetic. Every archetype carries a frequency. When you embody the victim, you attract rescuers or abusers. When you embody the hero, you attract crises to save. When you embody the caregiver, you attract takers. But when you step into the self, you attract truth. Life responds to your vibration. Change your archetype, and you change your reality. But there's one more layer. The deepest one, forgiveness. You must forgive yourself for the years you lived asleep, or for the roles you played, for the masks you wore. They weren't failures. They were necessary. They got you here. And now you can lay them down not with shame, but with gratitude. Because the moment you forgive your past self, you stop being a prisoner and start becoming a creator. Let's end with a truth that very few are ready to hear. You are not here to be an archetype. You are here to be a mystery, a paradox, a living, breathing contradiction. You are here to evolve, to rewrite, to surprise even yourself. And the moment you stop trying to figure yourself out and instead feel yourself forward, you begin the real journey, the journey home. So I ask you again, who are you without the story? Without the name, the role, the trauma, the archetype? Can you sit in that uncertainty long enough to find your answer? Or better yet, to let the answer find you? Part 3, the rebirth of the real you. So now, here we are standing at the edge of the unknown. The archetype has been exposed. The mask has cracked. The roles are trembling. You've walked through the fire of awareness and stared straight into the eyes of your own shadow. What now? This is the moment most people retreat. Because the next step isn't just awakening, it's transformation. And transformation always demands a death. Not a physical death, a symbolic one. The death of the false self. The ego that was built to protect, to perform, to please. But here's the paradox. The ego fights hardest right before it dissolves. It will whisper, but who will you be without me? And that question is terrifying, but necessary. Because the answer can only emerge through surrender, through letting go of everything you think you are, so you can become who you truly are. Let me ask you this. Have you ever let something beautiful die? A relationship, a dream, a version of yourself? Not because it was wrong, but because you realized it no longer fit the truth of who you were becoming. That's the kind of courage this rebirth requires. The philosopher Nietzsche said, one must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star. That chaos you feel, that disorientation, it's sacred. It's the prelude to your rebirth. But here's the truth they don't tell you. The real you is not a fixed identity. The real you is fluid, mysterious, unpredictable. You're not a noun. You're a verb, a becoming, a process, a sacred unfolding. And when you stop trying to find yourself like a lost object and instead start creating yourself like a masterpiece, something magical happens. You stop fitting in and you start standing out. Let's explore the mechanics of transformation. It begins with awareness, then comes deconstruction. But the final phase is embodiment. You have to live the new you, not just think about it, not just talk about it. Walk it, speak it, feel it, every day, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. That's the only way the new neural pathways get carved. Transformation is not a moment, it's a practice. Here's a tool that will change your life. Create a post-archetype identity map. It's not a list of goals, it's a declaration of essence. Ask yourself, what qualities does the real me carry? Not the me shaped by wounds, but the me shaped by wisdom. Write it out. Speak it daily. Act from it. This isn't fake it till you make it. This is be it till you believe it. Because belief follows behavior, not the other way around. And beware of the spiritual ego. That sneaky voice that says, now I'm better than others because I've broken free. That's just another archetype in disguise. The enlightened one, the guru, the healer. Don't swap one mask for another. Stay humble, stay curious. As Socrates said, the only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing. That humility, it keeps you fluid. And the fluid cannot be trapped. Let's talk about relationships. When you shift archetypes, your relationships will be tested. Some will resist your growth. Some will try to pull you back into the old role. Not because they're malicious, but because your change threatens their comfort. You were the caregiver. They expected you to always say yes. Now you say no and they call you selfish. You were the hero. Now you're tired and they call you weak. But that's not your burden to carry. Your only responsibility is to your truth. You will lose people. You will gain others. But more importantly, you'll meet yourself. Really meet yourself. Not the version you present at dinner parties. Not the curated version on social media, but the raw, radiant, uncontainable self. And in that meeting, you'll feel something you've craved your whole life, alignment. Not peace that comes from avoiding conflict, but peace that comes from embodying truth. And that truth might shake the world around you. Let it. Let me offer you a deeper insight. Archetypes serve a purpose in early life. They help us survive. But if you keep using survival tools in a thriving life, you'll feel like you're dying. That's the pain most people can't name. They're not depressed, they're dislocated from their essence. They're not anxious, they're allergic to the mask. And no amount of success, fame, or validation can fix that. Only realignment can. And here's the beautiful irony. When you stop trying to be something, you become everything. When you drop the narrow role, you become the full spectrum. You can be strong and soft. You can be wise and playful. You can lead and surrender. The archetype told you to pick one. But your soul was always meant to hold the paradox. That's what makes you divine. Let's ground this in practice. Each morning, ask yourself, what mask am I tempted to wear today? And then ask, what truth wants to be lived instead? This is your daily initiation. Over time, you'll notice something profound. The archetype's voice gets quieter. The self gets louder. Life begins to respond differently. Not because the world changed, but because your frequency did. The world doesn't reward masks anymore. It rewards realness, rawness, resonance. The era of the archetype is crumbling. People are starving for authenticity. And your liberation gives them permission to liberate themselves. That's the ripple effect of transformation. When you break free, you don't just free yourself. You free everyone who was watching. Let's end with fire. You are not here to live a rehearsed script. You are here to improvise with the universe, to co-create, to make art with your existence. The philosopher Alan Watts said, "The meaning of life is just to be alive." It is so plain and so obvious and so simple. And yet, everybody rushes around in a great panic, as if it were necessary to achieve something beyond themselves. But what if the greatest achievement is simply to be fully and unapologetically you? So I ask you now, one last time, who are you without the archetype? Who are you without the story? Who are you when no one is watching and nothing needs to be proven? That version of you, it's not a concept. It's not a destination. It's a choice, a moment, a breath. And this moment, right here, could be the beginning of the rest of your life. No more masks. No more roles. No more archetypes controlling your fate. Just you reborn, awake, and finally free.